Women are having more sex and being less loved. They are freer and more depressed. They claim ownership of their bodies, while the market makes a fortune from them. This is the great farce of our era. Female freedom has become a product, sexuality has become an algorithm, and pleasure has become a commodity. And the price? Anxiety, loneliness, and a generation of women who no longer know the difference between being desired and being valued. Have you noticed how exhausted most women are today? Not the fatigue of overworking, but the exhaustion of living out a freedom that, deep down, they do not feel. She says she loves her sexual freedom, but cries alone after empty dates. She posts stories with a smile and a filter, but spends the night scrolling, comparing her body to others. She says she is empowered, but the algorithm says, show more skin. She pretends control, but lives asking herself, why do I feel used? Camille Paglia was accepted by neither the left nor the right, because she said what destroys the ideological theater of both sides. The modern woman is not the opposite of the oppressed woman. She is her continuation, only with Wi-Fi. Paglia showed that women were convinced to believe that being exposed is being free, that enjoying pleasure is being strong, that being desired is being powerful. But the truth is different. We are creating a culture where women exhibit themselves to survive and are consumed little by little to feel seen. Sex, which should be a creative force, became a distraction. The body, which should be sacred territory, became a showcase. The woman, who should be a powerhouse, became entertainment. This video is a deep dive into everything they do not want you to think about. It is a mirror, and it will hurt. We will talk about the body used as a weapon and currency, the myth of equality that crushes the real feminine, the pleasure society that turned women into a spectacle, and how to reclaim consciousness before it is too late. Here, Camille Paglia is not an icon, she is an alarm. And if you have the courage to face dirty, cold, and necessary truths, stay until the end. Because today, either the woman wakes up or she continues smiling while fading away. Every woman knows it, even if she doesn't say it. There is a difference between using one's own body and being used through it. And almost no one wants to talk about the second case because it dismantles the theater of freedom. Female bodies sell everything, from beer to political causes. They are everywhere. Except under the real control of the one who inhabits them. The narrative is one of choice. But the question no one asks is, who is really choosing? Have you noticed how female nudity is always celebrated as empowerment? But where are the female bodies that do not fit the marketable aesthetic? They disappeared, or rather, they never appeared. This reveals everything. The female body, even in the so-called libertarian culture, still serves a gaze, the gaze of the other. Paglia wrote, "The female body is a force of nature. Culture tries to domesticate it, disguise it, aestheticize it, but behind the makeup there is still the abyss." This phrase is more than beautiful. It is a diagnosis. Paglia does not romanticize the body. She treats it as territory, as language, as war. In her view, women carry the weight of the sacred and the threatening in their bodies. That is why there has always been an attempt to control that body through religion, morality, consumption, and now, paradoxically, by the very woman who believes she is in charge, but is still trapped in the same cycle: be desirable or be discarded. Think about this. How many women today expose their own bodies on social media as a way of asserting themselves, and how many, deep down, feel emotionally impoverished afterward? The system is sophisticated. You exhibit yourself because you want to, but if you do not, you disappear. Is that the false choice? Freedom disguised as compulsion. Pornography, for example, celebrated as an expression of sexual freedom, is a theater of soulless bodily performance. Paglia attacks this point with precision. Pornography is a metaphor for our era. Moving bodies, absent souls. And the worst is that this kind of superficial, hyper-stimulated sexual culture is shaping human desire. Neuroscience shows that constant visual pleasure, stimuli, pornography, social media, performative nudity alter brain circuits, creating a generation with high desire and low capacity for real connection. The female body has become a banner, and the woman a curator of her own storefront. There is something deeply tragic in all this. Because while we believe we are liberating the female body, we are actually dissolving the most powerful thing it carries, its link with mystery, with time, with life. Camille Paglia reminds us that in ancient societies, the woman's body was sacred precisely because it was wild. Today, it is disposable because it became a product. And when the body is only surface, everything built upon it is superficial, including identity. So, the most uncomfortable question is, has the woman truly been liberated? Or has she only learned to offer herself in a more sophisticated way? This point leads us to understand that as long as the woman's body continues to be mediated by the desire of the other, be it man, the market, or ideology, it will never be free. True liberation begins when the body ceases to be performance and returns to being presence. Men are lost, women are exhausted, and both pretend everything is fine. Equality between the sexes did not liberate us. It confused us. We were taught that being equal was the goal, but we were never told that erasing differences comes at a high cost in desire, affection, and meaning. Today, couples love each other in theory and avoid each other in practice. Men are afraid to lead, afraid to make mistakes, afraid even to speak. Women are tired of doing everything, of being strong all the time, feeling like they have become a mother, therapist, and provider all at once, but with no one to support them when they break down. And then comes the question, why did equality leave us emotionally unbalanced? Camille Paglia answers with a slap. The modern woman wants equality, but despises the weak man. She wants protection, but rejects authority. She wants freedom, but hates the consequence. It is not a moralistic critique, it is a structural analysis. Paglia understands that men and women are biologically, psychologically, and symbolically distinct, and that erasing that generates frustration. The search for equality was legitimate, but what happened was something else. The standardization of the human being according to the masculine professional and feminine affective model simultaneously, creating an unattainable ideal for both. And the result is plain to see. Women today have more formal education, more presence in the market, and more sexual freedom than ever before. But they also have more anxiety, more burnout, more relational confusion. Men are less violent, more emotionally open, but also more passive, more misplaced, more lost. Third-wave feminism turned everything into a power game and destroyed the erotic tension between the sexes. Paglia warns. Eroticism is born of difference. Where there is forced equality, there is no tension. And without tension, there is no desire. Couples are together, but cold. Sex became a chore. Mutual admiration became a negotiation. And in the middle of this, men and women look at each other as if they were ideological enemies. But the tragedy is deeper. This idea of equality as reflection generated a woman who is guilty for being a woman, guilty for feeling a desire to be cared for, guilty for liking masculinity, guilty for not wanting to be her own boss all the time. And it generated a man who is castrated to please and then frustrated for not being respected. Equality, when it becomes the denial of differences, does not emancipate anyone. It amputates the nature of both. Western rationality, historically shaped by men, created a model of success based on control, autonomy, and production. But the feminine is not that. The feminine is flow, it is body, it is cyclical time, it is relationship. Trying to fit the modern woman into that mold is violent. And the proof is in the body. Chronic pain, persistent fatigue, depression, emotional infertility. Paglia has been shouting against this since the 90 seconds, and no one listens. She says, "Woman does not need to be equal to man. She needs to be recognized in her complexity, which includes the desire to dominate, and the desire to surrender. But our culture is binary and superficial. It only understands oppressor and oppressed, weak and strong. It does not understand the dance of polarity. This is the lie of equality. They told us that to be equal, we would have to be equal in everything. But true justice lies in respected difference, not forced resemblance. Paglia, who never bowed to political correctness, points out that civilization did not evolve despite sexual differences, but because of them. The tension between the sexes is the creative energy of the world. When you eliminate that, an anemic, sexually frustrated, and emotionally disconnected society remains. Do you want a happy woman? Do not force her to behave like a man. Do you want a strong man? Do not shame him for wanting to lead or protect. Respecting difference is not going back to the past. It is reclaiming what we lost along the way. When a man kills out of jealousy, the headline says, "Crime of passion." When a woman kills her own child, no one understands anything, because deep down, even in a supposedly irrational world, the feminine still carries an ancient weight, that of the sacred and the abyss. The woman is not just a body. She has been a symbol since the beginning of civilization. She has been a goddess, sorceress, virgin, mother, whore, saint, monster. And that is precisely what modernity erased. The woman as a living mythological figure, Camille Paglia asserts, woman is the origin of life and death. She bleeds without dying. She generates, she swallows, she is the night. And culture, which is masculine, lives trying to deny this. Paglia does not romanticize the feminine. She confronts it. She says the woman is a brutal enigma, and that the mistake of modern society was trying to simplify her, to transform the woman into a self-esteem project, a marketing product, a corporate warrior. But the collective unconscious has not forgotten. The tragic archetype still beats beneath the makeup, the slogans, and the productivity. That is why there is something misplaced in current narratives. They want us to believe that the woman is only a victim or a heroine. But the truth, uncomfortable, ambiguous, is that the woman can also be a predator. She can also be destructive. She can also generate chaos. And that dark side was erased from contemporary culture. Look at how the media treats female figures who break the script of sanity. Mothers who abandon children, women who manipulate, wives who kill. The reaction is always, that is not feminine. But it is. It always was. It was just hidden. In ancient art, this was evident. Lilith, Medusa, Kali, Circe. In modern art, the woman became a product or inspiration. She lost the symbolic terror that made her complete. Paglia analyzes. Masculine civilization tried to contain the overwhelming power of the woman through art. The woman came to be painted, not feared. This has consequences, because when culture does not recognize the feminine in its entirety, it reduces it to a function. The woman has to prove she is useful all the time, as beautiful, as efficient, as a mother, as a professional. She cannot be chaos, she cannot be shadow, she cannot be contradictory. And what cannot be expressed becomes disease. The repression of the tragic archetype of the feminine is part of the reason why so many women today experience deep existential crises. They feel they have to be good all the time, while carrying forces within themselves that do not fit the politically correct discourse. Paglia says, modern feminists reject the mythical woman. They want a logical, moral, and clean woman. That is dehumanizing. The real woman bleeds, feels rage, feels guilt, feels pleasure in destroying sometimes, like every human being. The difference is that the masculine always had cultural authorization to channel its destructive side. In war, in politics, in sport, the feminine did not. When she explodes, she frightens, and because she frightens, she is denied. This is not an apology for chaos, it is a request for symbolic honesty. The woman as a tragic archetype is not just the victim of patriarchy. She is the representation of the very cycle of nature. Birth, life, pain, death, rebirth. Forgetting this does not modernize us. It weakens us, because a woman who does not know her own shadow does not know herself. And a culture that refuses feminine tragedy is producing superficial, constrained women who believe that true strength lies in always seeming balanced. But balance is not the absence of chaos. It is the ability to navigate it. When the woman reconnects with her own archetype, with the myth that dwells within her, she no longer needs to act powerful. She becomes dangerous in the best sense. Not by being a threat to others, but because no one threatens her anymore. It has never been so easy to have sex, and so difficult to feel touched. We live surrounded by available bodies, liberated desires, scripted orgasms, but behind so much pleasure, the silence of a generation that lost intimacy grows. It is not due to a lack of sexual freedom that so many women are sad. It is due to an excess of experiences that mean nothing. Sex became a distraction, pleasure, an anesthesia, intimacy, a risk. Camille Paglia already foresaw this when she wrote, "The culture that idolizes pleasure, but does not understand the body as a temple, transforms desire into vice." She was not speaking against sex. Paglia defends sexuality as a vital power. The problem is when pleasure becomes an end in itself, and the body becomes a repetitive stage for a search that leads nowhere. Today, you can go out with someone in minutes. You can show everything in seconds. You can even make money from it. But try afterwards to look someone in the eyes for more than 10 seconds without looking away. Try to trust. Try to undress without having to exhibit yourself. Therein lies the tragedy. Statistics scream, the number of women with anxiety disorders, depression, eating disorders, and sexual dysfunctions is growing. All this in a scenario where sexual freedom is broad. This is not a coincidence. It is a consequence. Pleasure became repetition. And where there is compulsive repetition, there is a symptom. Freud already said, "When pleasure is sought without pause, without depth, it is no longer pleasure, it is flight." Paglia points out that the current culture despiritualized sex, disconnected desire from meaning, and transformed eroticism into protocol. And the result is what we see today. Women having sex without feeling, men compulsively masturbating, couples living as roommates. Sex was always ambiguous. It always involved risk, surrender, loss of control. But now it is treated as performance. The woman, to feel desired, needs to behave like an amateur porn actress and, in the end, leaves the encounter more alone than when she entered. Paglia is ironic. Sexual freedom without consciousness is just a choreography of the void. And this affects everyone, but especially women, because the female body does not forget. It records every act, every exposure, every ignored pain, every feigned pleasure. The woman's body is memory, and a memory violated by soulless repetitions, sooner or later, takes its toll. Here is the point no one wants to touch. Pleasure without affection, without substance, without narrative, wears out. It exhausts the nervous system, it weakens the soul. That is why so many people addicted to sex feel more dead than alive. Because an orgasm without presence is not connection, it is discharge. And living on discharges turns us into ghosts of ourselves. But culture insists, take advantage, enjoy, explore, savor. And every woman who dares to say that she does not feel good about it is treated as a moralist, old-fashioned, or weak. Paglia does not accept this. She says sex has to be free, yes, but it is only worthwhile if it is transcendent. If it touches not only the skin, but the spirit. If it is creation, not repetition. If it is authentic risk, not a stale protocol. True sexual freedom demands courage. Courage to know oneself, to say no, to recognize that not all pleasure liberates. There are pleasures that are just gilded bars. You get used to it, you get distracted, you get drunk, and when you realize it, you no longer feel anything. And a woman who does not feel, a woman who only acts, is not alive. She is decorated. Every woman, at some point in her life, feels the desire to disappear, not to die, to disappear. to disappear from the gaze of others, from the obligation to please, from the performance of being fine, to disappear for a while, to return to being just body and soul, without a script, without expectation, without an audience. This desire to disappear is the cry of the real woman trying to survive. We have reached a point where everything intimate became public. Everything natural became content. Everything that was pain became engagement. The woman was so many things in the last decades. Libertarian, seductive, powerful, multitasking, inspiring, sensual, self-sufficient, that she almost lost herself. And now, an ancient question arises with a new echo. Who am I without the need to be everything all the time? Paglia always defended that the woman will only be truly free when she stops seeking validation in prefabricated narratives, both patriarchal and feminist. She wrote, "The woman needs to get out of the ideological trench and look at herself as a living, cyclical, instinctive creature. Not a concept, but a being. This phrase has weight. The real woman does not fit the molds, neither of the saint nor the empowered one. She needs to rebuild herself in a place that is denser, more chaotic, and more honest, where fury and sweetness, pleasure and tiredness, surrender and autonomy all fit." But what does this mean in practice? It means, first, accepting pain not as a failure, but as a compass. The pain of the overdemanded body, the pain of stifled desire, the pain of the underrepresented soul, the pain that no one posts on the feed. The reconstruction begins when the woman rejects the role of spectacle, when she stops editing herself to fit in, when she chooses depth instead of relevance, when she understands that her soul was not made to please the algorithm, neither Instagram's nor the one for relationships. This reconstruction is not visible, not Instagrammable, not sexy. It is done in the dark, in silence, in denial. In the denial to live in a rush, in the denial to get excited by little, in the denial to settle for the superficial. Paglia advocates a return to the real body, to real desire, to the savage intelligence of the woman who thinks for herself, who feels inside, who does not need the approval of either the patriarchy or performative progressivism. Perhaps that is why the way out is not a new doctrine, but a kind of individual rebirth. Each woman will have to deconstruct herself internally, away from prying eyes. She will have to silence the external noise and listen to her own cycle, her own time, her own discomfort. Some will find this in motherhood, others in art, others in silence, others in love. But not that sugary soap opera love, but the kind of love that demands real surrender, with the courage to fail, fall, and rebuild. Paglia points out, the true female revolution will be the woman who no longer needs to prove anything neither to men, nor to women, nor to herself. There is no manual for the real woman. She will be multiple, contradictory, uncomfortable. She will make uncomfortable those who want submission and those who want militancy all the time. She will make uncomfortable those who only see the woman as a body and those who only respect her as a mind. She will not be domesticated, and perhaps, for the first time, she will be truly free. This is the reconstruction that matters. Not the one seen in the mirror, but the one felt when no one is watching. The woman who gets up not to perform, but to inhabit. Who does not smile to please, but who breathes deeply and continues. That woman, yes, will be dangerous because she will be whole. You have made it this far, and that says a lot. In a world where everything is distraction, stopping to listen to something dense, uncomfortable, and real is an act of resistance in itself. If this video moved you in some way, if it took you off autopilot, if it made you think or even hurt a little, know that just by being here, watching, you are already part of something important. This channel is not just a content space, it is a space for confrontation, for lucidity. Here we talk about what they prefer to silence, and if you felt that this represents you, then you are already part of it. If you want to help this message reach more people without relying on algorithms or trends, share, like, and comment on what you thought of this topic. Also, suggest a topic that interests you. Every suggestion is valuable and allows us to study different aspects and bring deeper debates and analyses. But look, just by watching, commenting, and sharing, you are already helping. A lot. Every conscious view sustains this project. Every word you leave here helps to keep this channel alive and necessary. Because, after all, we only continue because we have you on the other side. And if this content gave you something, perhaps now is your turn to give back in any way you can. Thank you for being here, truly. See you in our next video.